We are live on LinkedIn, and we've also pushed it over to Facebook and I think another platform, YouTube. So if you're tuning in, awesome. Thanks for coming on. I've got Matt Druin on here with me. We're both local to the Rochester, New York market. We love real estate. So we pretty much eat and sleep real estate 24/7. So we thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about a business improvement district, also known as a BID, which is a pretty hot topic in Rochester right now. We've got a lot of people that are for it, and we've got a lot of people that are against it. So I went to a meeting that was hosted by the RRDC. I believe that's the acronym that they're using these days. And the sentiment in the audience from the people that were opposed to it was that it was a non-partial forum, and really it was them just trying to get out all the troops around them saying, hooray, 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 this is going to be great. And there wasn't much opportunity for the opposition to speak and to air their concerns. So they were kind of looking for more of an open forum where they could, have a dialogue with people, same type of format, but be able to see both sides of the coin, the people that were for it and the people that were against it. So I know Matt's got a lot of background in this type of thing, and he knows the bid that's happening here in Rochester. So I'm curious to hear what his take is on it.
Okay, so I guess a bid is a foreign concept to a lot of people in Rochester. So I guess we should start with defining what it is, and I guess the current status. I guess I have the arguments for it, and I have the arguments against it, and I understand both of those arguments. So a business improvement district is essentially where property owners in a given geographic area will band together to basically raise their property taxes to form a nonprofit organization that will provide enhanced services for a given geographic area. Those enhanced services can be anything from enhanced security to public art, to public programming, partnering with other nonprofits for enrichment activities and stuff like that. And there are these bids, and multiple of them, that exist in pretty much every city across the United States. I think there's about 1,200 bids nationwide. And RDDC, Rochester Downtown Development Corporation, has been pushing for this concept ever since I could remember, when Heidi Zimmermeyer was the executive director or CEO of RDDC. And just recently, to form a bid takes several years. In this case, will probably take 2 years. So we finally, how the process works is city council and the mayor need to vote to start a conversation about forming a bid or business improvement district. A few months ago, city council, I think 6 members of city council voted to start the conversation, like a formal conversation as to what the scope of the bid will be. And that's kind of where we're at right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Somebody in the audience said that we had done this process a few years ago and it got shut down, and that they were upset that city council kind of went behind their back and started this conversation again without any input from the public, and that the public at large, and of course this is their opinion, does not approve the bid because it's going to pretty much force them out of the neighborhood through increased taxes, which are going to be pushed down to the tenant, which is going to affect, both the residents and the local business owners. And it's really going to predominantly benefit those bigger corporations that can absorb that tax hike, and are going to benefit from being able to have, their businesses kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but they get special treatment, if you will. That's kind of the concern that the residents had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right now we do have a bid that's just outside of downtown Rochester in High Falls. It's a very, very small business improvement district that was formed in the High Falls area, probably, I don't know, like at least a decade ago. And so the arguments against the bid, for instance, is that the case studies that have been pulled from all of these cities nationwide is that bids are used to push marginalized people out of the areas that they are. One, through the enhanced security, enhanced police presence, in terms of, like, let's say, pushing undesirable people out of neighborhoods, such as your unhoused, or people that don't look clean and safe, and also co-opting the arts community, and taking advantage of the arts community, because a lot of these bid projects involve putting together permanent art installations and that sort of thing. But I think the primary concern is in the, sort of like the like over policing of areas that fall within a bid. And that is kind of like the main concern. There will be increase in property taxes for people that own property within the bids. And yes, like, there are a lot of commercial leases that are structured that if our taxes go up, then, you have to pay for your pro rata share of those tax increases. I think right now where we are is we're in the customization process of the bid. So I think that maybe at this meeting, were they still arguing that there should be a bid or not, or is that, like, what was kind of the input there? Because that's kind of what it was feeling like.
Yeah, at the meeting, that was kind of the sentiment, that they felt like this meeting was kind of bring people in and get them all gooey about a bid, versus an open forum where we could talk about the pros and cons and have a good dialect back and forth, well educated, so they can make a decision. It was more like, oh, the bid is so awesome, everybody should love it, because it was, presented and funded by the side that wants to get the bid in place. But there were a lot of people there were artists in the audience, and they had the same sentiment. Like, they said, hey, we can do this ourselves. We don't need a bid. We can form groups and we can do it. So I'm just telling you what they were very passionate about vocalizing. And there was a lot of them in the audience. I'd say, at least 20% of the audience were there in direct opposition to the bid. The rest of the 80%, there were people like me that just wanted to hear what was going on, get more information, and kind of understand what the options were. Because on the surface, it does sound like a really good idea. I do have a building where this bid is going to be most likely structured, so my taxes will go up and I'll have to pass those taxes on to my tenants. So I totally get where, a resident might be coming from, where, they have an affordable space today where they can rent and they can enjoy and they can, go to their favorite spots. And now we get a bid, the taxes go up, their rent goes up, and now they're priced out of that marketplace, and they've got to go find someplace else to live after they've been a community member, for 10 plus years in this neighborhood. And now, because of the bid, they're forced out.
Yeah, I'm definitely sympathetic to that, in terms of, the infuriating thing about, let's say, gentrification, for instance, is, downtown, after Bausch and Lomb, Kodak, Xerox left, kind of became like this forgotten landscape that, usually where there's places that are forgotten and kind of left for dead. For instance, there's people that go, that will move in there and make that their home, because, it's not the, Park Avenue area where, that disaffected community was, gentrified out, 30 years prior, let's say. So I'm definitely sympathetic to that. The issue is, like, how much are taxes going to go up? Like, how much is this special assessment going to be? That's largely going to be determined upon a budget. The budget's going to largely be determined upon what the scope of the bid is and what things that it performs. And that's what has left to be, customized. I think that the argument that, like, oh, we can do this together and band together with all our organizations, that sort of thing. Dude, I've been involved with a lot of nonprofits and I've volunteered a lot, and the burnout factor is a real thing. Okay. I've done, performed duties where I haven't gotten paid. And after a few years is like, all right, time to move on. And this is kind of what happens with this. This is why we need to have a financial sustainability component to it. And I think that this argument of, like, no bid, not ever, is kind of like, well, what if the bid did everything you wanted it to do? Like, you have to come to the table and advocate for what you want to see downtown, because right now it's not acceptable. The status quo is definitely not acceptable. We have a town that, like, our downtown is it's like, it's embarrassing in terms of there's no foot traffic whatsoever. It dies after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We have street level retail tenants that struggle for a lack of customers. And the thing is that, when we have programming downtown that brings people down to that space, we have, our tenants benefit from that. And I think that, building that critical mass through programming is something that I'm strongly pushing. I don't think that we need this like enhanced, like, security guard mall cops walking around downtown Rochester, because, there is like a lot of your suburbanites that visit downtown, like get, um, you know, lose their mind when they get approached by a panhandler. But like, there's not a lot of unhoused people that are wandering around downtown because there's nobody there.
Right.
So, I'm a strong proponent for, we've already agreed through city council to start the bid process. So why don't we talk about what we want the bid to do and what actions and scope it wants to be, rather than just saying no bid, not ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the programming aspect of it as well. I think the other sentiment at the meeting was that the money would end up getting special interest. People that know people would end up getting that money. And it's like, then it's going to benefit one group more than another group. So, they tried to combat that by saying it's going to be an open, transparent process, and, all business owners will have a stake. But they still think that, the bigger business owners will have more pull, and they'll be able to pretty much structure it to benefit their businesses versus, the rest of the people that are paying into that tax.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that as well. It's just that when you look at the context of the things down there, most people that own buildings downtown, we're pretty much like in this together and want, whatever is best for downtown to happen, which is like activity and some type of, street level vitality on a constant basis. And I think that and let's look at like the proposed board of directors for the Rochester Downtown Partnership. It's not like, you have, all these developers that are all the board, the board members. There's two seats that are on that proposed board that are like from the developer's background. Andy Galena being one of them. The rest of that, like, I think it's like a board of directors is like 15 people. The rest of them are, the mayor of Rochester, the local lawmakers in terms of like assembly makers. I think Jeremy Cooney is proposed to be on the board of directors. Adam Bello, like it's a lot, and there's a lot of other people that are on there that do not come from that. One thing that I think that is kind of a weakness is that they have one resident as a proposed person for that board, which I think there needs to be a stronger representation on the resident side of that. I think it seems to be the proposed board of directors seems to be like very, very like bureaucratic top level heavy, and sort of instead of having this sort of like this, more of like a grassroots representation there. So that would be my only qualms against its proposed structure now.
Gotcha. Very cool.
So you own a building downtown. What do you want to see downtown, Mark? Because I mean, I can't imagine that you're happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got so many parking lots that are underutilized, not being used. They've got weeds growing up through them. Our downtown is not very walkable. So I think getting some infill, making it a little bit more dense would go a long way. We pretty much have Main Street, which is nice and walkable, but as soon as you get on the south side of Main Street's better now that we've done the infill of the inner loop. I think the northern infill is going to be huge, and hopefully it'll combat some of that problem. I mean, if you go to where I'm at, it's just parking lots all around me. I do have a few neighbors, but I would say 80% of the landscape is parking, which makes it very unfriendly for pedestrian oriented stuff. Like if I want to walk and get coffee, it's, my closest coffee place is probably Java's, which is, it's at least a quarter mile, and I just think if I'm downtown and I've got to walk for 10 minutes to get to a coffee spot, that's a pretty long walk when you think of, hey, I'm in this center city. So just making it more walkable, definitely improving the programming. Rochester does a pretty good job with the Jazz Fest and the Party in the Park and the Parcel 5. I just think we need a lot more of that, a lot more consistency, and bringing more arts down. The Fringe Fest is nice, but I think, having more markets and just more events, more activities, more concerts would go a long way.
Yeah, I agree. That being said, I mean, you referenced some like pretty large festivals. I mean, I think that like, with Rochester, we have like festivals coming out of our butt, right? I don't even think the programming needs to be like these like colossal events like on a continual basis. Like it could be something as simple as like with our tenants, the Ninth Floor Artist Collective, paying them to put on like an outdoor, like an outdoor class or something of like a public facing arts oriented function where you have like, all right, we're gonna do one of the guys is does a lot of art instruction. So if you have like a kids like art, like art class that's done outside, like right where the aqueduct bridge is in that little park and that sort of thing. And it could be something that could be like 20, 30 people. It doesn't need to be like this huge, huge thing. But I see when people come downtown, the positive halo effect that it has on the areas around it. I mean, most recently I went to Disney on Ice downtown, and it was just awesome to see people like walking the sidewalks and checking things out down there. And the more they come there, they're like, you know what, parking's not so bad. We just like, we park at the Civic Center garage, or we park at the Sister Cities garage, or we find park in one of these like surface lots. So I think that that having a greater familiarity and like getting the reps in for people visiting downtown will might have somebody be like, you know what, maybe I want to relocate my office down here, or maybe I own a coffee shop out Monroe Avenue in Pittsburgh. I've seen this vacant storefront here. Maybe that could be a good spot, good spot for my next location. So I just think that programming aspect, being all across the spectrum in terms of small, medium, large. And the most recent bid event that I went to was they called it a walk shop, where we essentially walked with the current CEO RDDC, Galen Brooks, around downtown, and with a bunch of like stakeholders. They weren't developers; these were like residents, and we just talked about like, what would you like to see here? How does this area make you feel? Not once did anybody ever bring up I don't feel safe here, we need more security.
Right.
It was more about like, hey, I'd really like to see a coffee shop here, or like a small little bistro, or or this, that, the other thing, or this bail bondsman that occupies a retail storefront. It would be great if there was some type of like little sandwich shop that was there instead. That was like how the conversations were going. When there was an open dialogue about it. It wasn't about like, hey, this guy's hanging out in the corner here and he looks dirty. Like he needs to be gone. Like, I don't feel safe here. Like that's not where the intention of this is going, even though in other bids across the nation, that's kind of like where it's like this whole mantra of clean and safe is the thing that's been pushed in terms of pushing marginalized people out of these spaces. The thing is that there's not even enough marginalized people downtown. That's how dead it is. Like seriously,
Right.
like why are we even like, talking about that? But safety after hours is more of a concern for us rather than during the day. I mean, we get our buildings vandalized at night. We have a tenant that has called Peach Blossom. They're in the Wilder building. They got their window broken probably a fourth time in like 6 months. I think that, thinking about those types of things and our tenants feeling safe from that standpoint after hours, because there's not even an RPD officer that's assigned to downtown right now. So,
wow. Yeah, we definitely need to change that. I would say the feeling is kind of mutual where we're at. We feel fine most of the time. If it becomes kind of late, then I even feel like I'm constantly looking around and making sure that I'm aware of my surroundings. And it's definitely a concern.
No, absolutely. So has anybody talked about prospective, getting back to the tax increase question? Cause that's another concern, right?
Mhm.
Have they even talked about a proposed budget and what the proposed tax increases would be?
No, they're still so early in this that they haven't.
That's why everybody needs to get involved instead of being like no bid, not ever. Like let's actually have an earnest conversation about that stuff, because I think that we're having too many people that are still debating about whether a bid should be formed. City council already voted. Okay.
Right.
It's like the bid process has started. There's
Mhm.
3 additional times before the bid gets formalized that either city council or the mayor, I believe, can kill this thing. So,
Okay.
so it's not something that's like solidified. So like, let's try to make it the best that we can, customized to our unique community interests, and just kind of stop with this like rhetoric of like, oh, it didn't work someplace else, or it was used for evil purposes someplace else, and look what it did. Like, there are areas where it does work. So let's see what they do and model it after that.
Yeah. What, in your experience, what is the forum like after, now that it's, been approved at the council level? Are there going to be, public hearings and forums to talk about it, or how does that how does that work moving forward?
Um, there should be. The walk shop was one of those things that was pushed out through RDDC's distribution list. Um, so I think there's going to be many input sessions. I wish that there was a little bit more like, all right, this is what the calendar is going forward. I think there should be a lot more workshops associated with, you know, all right, let's not talk about whether we're going to form a bid. Let's talk about, if we're going to form a bid, what would you like it to perform? Um,
Hmm.
so I would like to see like a calendar of input sessions on this, because some guy that lives out in the suburbs that owns a building downtown that never visits that building is going to have a much different opinion than somebody like myself who's at my buildings every day, or people that live downtown. So I'd like to get more of that, and maybe there is a calendar that's out there, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. Cool. Well, for my homework will be to dig into it a little bit and find out when the next meetings are, if we've got any that are like non-biased, where it's maybe through the city's planning versus through, what is it, RDDC? No.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Very cool.
So have we beat this horse enough?
Yeah, we beat the horse enough.
To be determined. So Mark's still not sold. So I'm sold though.
Yeah, I'm not sold, I think I need to see the numbers. What does the tax hike look like? And then kind of play around with it from a mathematical perspective to see if I feel like, all this money is going to be beneficial enough to deem that it worthy of the tax hike. I'm just worried that, I don't really trust government to spend money wisely. So I know this isn't government, but it feels kind of like a bureaucracy where it good decisions might not be made. The best decisions might not be made with the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, valid point.
So, you got anything else you want to talk about while we're on this live, or I think we're at about 25 minutes in.
Well, let's talk about. I guess let's talk about the markets. I mean, we can talk about real estate and financial as to what you're seeing out there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what are you looking at for rates right now? I'm doing a refi, and I think they quoted me. I have to check my notes. He emailed it over to me the other day. I think I'm in the sevens somewhere for like a portfolio product.
Okay. I've gotten quotes around like 6.5 to 6.7%.
Okay.
Kind of 25-year amortization, five-year term. Usually the anxiety, the anxiety producing thing is that it floats until like 72 hours before you close. with with a
Right.
lot of these banks you work with. But we've been getting great rates and proposals from Nextier Bank, which is Nextier. They're based out of Pennsylvania, and they've been growing in the Rochester area and getting exposure to the Rochester commercial real estate market. So I've closed three deals with them so far this year. But yeah, other banks have been getting more of like the mid sevens,
Yeah.
which is tough. Um,
How are they
but
able
yeah, I
to
mean,
be so low?
I I think that a lot of community banks are probably doing some risk management as it pertains to financing commercial investment property. So typically, like community banks will like set the rates higher to do less deals. Um, Whereas like next year is basically got a foothold in the Rochester, growing a foothold in the Rochester area. So um, I think they're probably more willing to do more advantageous deals from an interest rate side of things.
Okay.
It's just my feeling on the whole thing.
I ran into somebody recently that said their bank actually let them lock way ahead of closing, which I was kind of jealous of because I had that same problem where I just was watching the interest rates go up and up and up as I'm trying to get myself to closing. And you know how that goes with underwriting in the bank, and like you think you're supposed to close, and a month and a half later you actually close. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely took it on the chin dealing with that. And if I could have locked sooner, I could have saved myself significantly. Have you found any banks that are willing to lock ahead of time and let you have that locked for a while?
I used to. That's what I was used to.
Hmm.
When I started doing more commercial deals, it got kind of customary that the rate would float. But I mean, there's some that will lock at application.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, even in this environment, it's like especially with the story of like SVB, you know, they lock into a if they lock into a bad deal, they might have to like write down the value of that asset
Right.
right at closing because it's not in line with market. So I do know why they do that, but it's like it's definitely tough when the numbers are tight to begin with on a property, and that 50 basis points can make or break the deal. Um,
Right.
so, but no, I mean, I think that, and the whole thing is like, our mantra is, marry the property, date the rates. So we know that, property is going to pencil between a certain interest rate band. And even if it's not as advantageous, like, as a 3% interest rate, if it's a property in a great location that we're buying for the right price, um, we always have the option of refinancing later as well into a lower rate and doing a rate and term refi. Um, you
Hmm.
know, but yeah, definitely got to be definitely got to be careful with that. So
Yeah. The longest fixed I got on commercial was 15 years. I still haven't done any agency. Have you worked in the agency space for those longer fixed terms?
well, we are not doing a lot of multifamily, so we're not doing a lot of the Fannie Freddie agency type of debt. And we haven't even gone out to like the CMBS market for our commercial deals because we've been able to partner with our community and regional banks locally to kind of keep it local. But yeah, I've been seeing like a lot of those a lot of agency deals aren't happening because rates are so high. Um,
Yeah. Have
but
you
yeah,
found
we should
any
definitely, yeah.
local Have you found any local lenders that'll do more than 5 years for you for your commercial?
Oh, for fixed.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, on smaller deals that I've done, I believe Family First will fix for 10 years. I think Reliant is the only one that I know that I think will do a 15-year fixed.
Yeah.
Um,
I went I went through Reliant just in the nick of time before rates went crazy. So I'm patting myself on the back for doing that because I had been kind of dragging my feet. while the rates were low. And now, oh my goodness, I've got a couple resets that are coming up over the next few years. I think the sentiment in the marketplace right now is that, rates are probably going to go back down. So a lot of people are looking for a shorter term fixed, like maybe a 3-year, and then do a refi then in the anticipation of lower rates. But I'm just wondering, for once we get back to maybe another low rate environment, what should people be thinking about as far as financing goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that rates will somewhat normalize eventually. I think it's going to take a lot longer than most people are anticipating. I think that we're going to have, stubbornly high persistent inflation over the next few years. And I think that, the Fed on its monetary policy is going to, keep things pretty hawkish. And I think that where we're going to get that, we talked about this before, we're going to get that correction is essentially on the, inflation is going to be higher than wage growth. So you're going to have an erosion of asset values that way. You may not see a huge drop in asset values, but you're just going to see that persistently high interest rates. So we're fully prepared, to go from our 5% to 5.5% up to to between 7 and 8%. It's gonna stink, but we'll definitely lock in at a shorter term deal. Hopefully, get the best rate we can at the time, and then do like you just said, just refinance it when rates become more advantageous.
Do you think the expectation could be wrong and that they could keep these rates held higher for longer than people anticipate?
I think that's what's going to happen, unless
Yeah.
we have some sort of black swan event that happens that completely puts the economy in free fall. But I just don't see the fundamentals right now in terms of that that happening. I think that instead of a catastrophic financial event or a catastrophic economic event, we're going to have a period of extended economic malaise.
Hmm. Probably like a decade long.
I don't know about that long. I don't know, Mark. I stopped predicting things a long time ago.
Right.
I can just only be like,
Yeah.
all right, what?
Yeah.
Because
Well, I mean, if you
yeah.
look at the markets, they're predicting that in 3 years rates are going to be better. So,
Mhm.
but who knows? Who knows?
It's killing. I mean, it's killing a lot of people in complementary industries, law firms that do a lot of refinances and also purchases are they're trying to scramble and find business in other practice areas to keep the lights on. So I definitely think there's some ripple effects, and even in the banking industry, there's not a lot of refis going on, and the real estate market from a price perspective on single family homes is out of control, but there's not a lot of purchases happening because there's not a lot of inventory. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's one thing I'm wondering, what's how are we going to solve that issue, because the demand really isn't going away and the supply isn't keeping up with that.
Right. And now the building is kind of paused again, which is exasperating the original problem. So,
Mhm. So what would you say, in terms of the governor's proposal on, I think it's 800,000 new homes in the next 10 years, what do you think needs to happen for that to actually come to fruition, in terms of we're talking about market rate developments and homes for sale and all that good stuff.
that's a really good question. I mean, I'm sure they'll get some incentives in there to get the developers on board to start building again. Right. So,
Maybe with I don't know, maybe more mortgage subsidies or something like that. Like you get a subsidized rate if you buy a new house or something like that.
yeah, that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
So I know that's what some builders nationwide are having to do is they're buying down the rates for their home purchasers because the homes are so expensive.
Hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, and then there's also the zoning aspect that to build anything out on actually developable land is you have nobody that is wants to approve variances and use changes and that sort of thing in those towns. So I'm wondering how the state is actually going to force their hand. I'm pretty sure there's probably going to be some constitutional type of challenges to that type of dealings.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how the state would do it at a state level to force people to build, really.
Yeah, I was like, I want to build a 200 unit apartment community behind your house on this land. Like, does the state come down and say like, no, we pre-approve that, and like our initiative or objective trumps that of whatever your zoning is.
Right. Yeah, I don't know how that would work legally. That seems like a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think? What are you seeing out there in the marketplace? I mean, are you looking at deals actively right now, or what?
Yeah, it's still pretty much pencils down. I mean, nothing is penciling out with these rates, and the sellers really aren't ready to sell. They're probably locked in at some decent interest rates, and why would they sell if they're sitting on a 3%, 30-year fixed? Like, they got no reason.
Have you been looking at any office, or are you just strictly on residential multifamily?
Residential multifamily is what I've been focusing on for my underwriting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's where we've been able to find a niches in the office market. It's the only asset class that people hate, so that's
Right.
that's what we've been going into. So I don't know, we're long-term value investors. So when we see like there's like certain animosity towards a particular asset class, especially something we already have exposure to, we take a second look at it, and we've been able to find some great deals. And the way we manage for risks is we got to buy it right.
Right. Are you worried about a looming recession and how that might affect your occupancy at an office space?
We look at what the tenant mix currently is, what types of industries they're in, and if they're recession resistant. A lot of your white collar offices are not in extremely cyclical businesses. So building that we just bought downtown, the Court Exchange building, was predominantly New York State agencies. And we researched those agencies and found out they're largely self-funded. So they're not they don't depend on tax receipts in order to fund their operations. They fund their operations through asset seizures and judgments and stuff like that. So it really kind of depends on it. If there was an office building we were looking at that, all of the tenants were like real estate related, and there was a bank that was in there that was like a mortgage bank, and that there was a attorney's office that was largely did real estate closings. I know those industries are struggling right now. So that might be something that I'd be like, I'd have to adjust my underwriting for, and probably need to buy it at a lower price to account for that risk.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, it kind of depends. And what we've been seeing in the office market is the Class A office has been taking the biggest beating. We're finding that a lot of the office deals that are out there are happening in the B class office space, anywhere between 1,000 to 3,000 square feet. The A class office space is, the vacancy is between 25 and 30%. And so, and sometimes, and even larger on like larger office footprints. So if we can acquire an asset like that and offer that product to a B class office user for the same price they're paying right now for B class office, and have A class office we're offering them, then we can make deals, especially for those that have leases that are rolling off, in terms of getting them a better value in order to stabilize those properties. But the markets that I follow, the B class office space is about 11% vacancy, and A class is about 25 to 30%.
Wow. Are you underwriting outside of the Rochester area, or are you pretty much sticking local?
I'm a local yokel, man. I can't do it. Like I just need to be able to drive by my properties,
Yeah.
and visit them. And we have a lot of smaller spaces, a lot of smaller office spaces available. So, we broker those in house, most of the time. I like to be the one that shows the spaces, because like the commercial leasing is like very relationship driven. So I like to
Yeah.
be able to meet those prospects on site, hear about what their goals are, what they need, where they're looking to go, and kind of like build those face-to-face relationships. Because if I show a space and and I know it's may not be a good fit for them after seeing it, then I'm like, okay, well, I have another space at the Wilder building that would be perfect for them. So
Right.
let me give them a call and get them in there, and then relationships turn into introductions to other people. So I like to be like really, really hands on, especially in the leasing side of things. So, and I can't do that. Especially, I like, this may be a wrong assumption to have, but like, if I have a 500 square foot office space available, is the broker I hire going to be as motivated as I am to lease that space?
Right. That's true.
So, because, space that's, let's say it's like $750 a month, right? So if you take, and we charge a brokerage fee, at our brokerage firm of 6% on the total deal amount. So if we take 750 times 12, $9,000 a year times three, because typically get a 3-year deal out of it. That's $27,000 economic value. So times that by 6, that's a commission of $1,600.
Right.
But that's nine or $27,000 in economic value to us. So,
Right.
but we still cooperate with brokers and pay them full commissions if they bring us a deal on spaces we have available.
Mhm.
We do a lot of that, but we do a lot in house, and I think that we add a lot of value from that standpoint in terms of increasing our asset values and cash flow on our investments.
Yeah, for sure. That's why we like the management side of things as well, because then we can control our own destiny on our occupancy rates. So yeah, right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, we're at 1:45, so we made it 45 minutes on this one. I know you got
Okay.
a
All
dentist
right.
appointment. You got a dentist appointment coming up.
I got a dentist appointment in Geneseo. So, yeah, it's going to take me about 40 minutes out there. Funny story though. The dentist I went to when I was a kid was like, I think that she was like Russian, and she was like, I think exacting like the, Cold War revenge on me when I was a kid, getting my teeth cleaned. And so it was a nightmarish experience for me. So, there was years after I, graduated high school and I was on my own in college. I just didn't even go to the dentist. And then I found a dentist in Geneseo when I was going to school there that was like, the dental hygienist was so gentle and so nice to talk to. And I was like, and I've just been going there ever since. Like I can't leave her. So
Hey, sounds like my daughter. She has to get gas to go get her teeth cleaned. They literally have to give her laughing gas to, and even that is difficult. So hopefully she has a moment where she can come through and find somebody that she'll let work on her teeth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, well, Mark, thanks again for having me on. I that was a non-negotiable appointment. I couldn't wait another 6 months to get my teeth cleaned. So I think that will be good for next Thursday at 2:00.
Perfect. That sounds good. I found somebody that would come on as a guest, so I'll give you their background and we can think of some good stuff to ask them.
Sweet, we got somebody to interrogate. That's awesome.
That's right. Cool.
All right. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see you out there, and bye to everybody in
All
LinkedIn
right.
and Facebook land.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody.